Hello and welcome to another episode of Space Plus. As you can probably tell, I'm not at my desk as I usually am for these. Instead, I'm in South Africa. I'm not actually in South Africa for any space-related reasons, but there's enough going on right now that I thought it was worth doing a very quick update. So let's get into things happening in space right now. We are going to the moon. For the first time in my entire lifetime, humans are going back to the moon. If all goes according to schedule, in the next few days, 4 humans will blast off the surface of this planet and do a swoop around our satellite, the moon. They're not going to land, but they will travel further than any human being has ever traveled in our entire history as a species. The only other people to have come close to the distance that the Artemis II crew are about to embark on is Apollo 13. And that, well, you may know that was not intentional. So we're intentionally going further than any humans have ever been before. And all of this is also in service of building up to actually landing on the surface, not for the next Artemis launch. This is one of the recent changes that has just kicked in. Artemis 3 will be another test of technology. And by the time Artemis 4 rolls around, we will have boots on the moon. It's a very exciting time. There's been some interesting announcements made recently by the fairly new NASA administrator, Jared Isaacman. Those changes have impacted some of that roadmap ahead for the rest of the Artemis program, including the suspension of the Gateway project. This was the idea of building a space station in permanent orbit around the moon, a little bit like we have right now with the International Space Station. European Space Agency and other partners were very heavily involved in that side of the program, and he has just suspended it. This is obviously going to have quite big implications for, I guess, the relationship between NASA and ESA, and also impact how much other partners to NASA want to get involved in the future if this is the kind of thing that might happen. What happens to the existing infrastructure that has already been built for Gateway remains to be seen. They will obviously try and make sure that the money that's been spent, the things that have been built, still can be used in some capacity, but it's back to the drawing board on some of these things. I know that Gateway wasn't a universally loved concept. The idea that we could just actually build a base directly on the surface has always seemed more appealing, to some at least. So the impact that it'll have on companies around the world, other partners to NASA, but especially Europe, will be very interesting to see in the next little while. On the topic of Europe, I was very pleased to be at Spacecom Europe in London in March. I got to meet a great number of people, attend some really interesting talks, walk the floor, see some familiar faces, and just kind of soak it all up. It was great to be there, and I'm sure I'll see some of you at the next space conference. Other news on the European side, there's obviously a race to launch from European soil into space. Scotland has obviously got its eyes on the prize. It is looking to launch from this Saxavord spaceport up in Shetland in the summer of this year. In the meantime, the Andøya spaceport in Norway has already had one launch, wasn't successful in getting to orbit, and was about to have its second attempt to reach orbit earlier this week, when the launch was scuppered by, of all things, a rogue fishing vessel accidentally getting into the exclusion zone that had been set up around the spaceport, which is there for safety to make sure that, if the rocket does come back down, there's nobody around that could be impacted by that. So the moment that a little fishing vessel crosses over that line, they had to scrub the entire mission. And that then delays when they can launch again, because they have very specific launch windows. So potentially the Norwegians were about to win that title of successful European launch. So Scotland may still be in with a chance. I just find it very interesting how we think of space as this absolute cutting edge, futuristic, almost sci-fi technology, and something as simple as a fishing vessel going slightly out of where it ought to be can have such a major impact on this cutting edge sector. The seas around the spaceport are clearly used regularly by fishermen. So we have to always balance the needs of everyone around us when we're trying to build this new technology. It's the same argument that I think Sutherland Spaceport, which has now been paused up in Scotland, but had also a very interesting sort of connection between the people who used the land, the history of land ownership in Scotland in general, and this promising new sector that was going to bring investment into a previously deprived area. All of these different elements of human society all mixed together around spaceports in a way that I think is quite interesting. So there's still more to come on the European race to launch, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. Now, I had also teased Yuri's Night coming up on April the 12th. We were hoping to have Edinburgh's first internationally recognized Yuri's Night event, since I will not be in Edinburgh for Yuri's Night anymore. That will have to come another time. Potentially, there'll be the first Yuri's Night in Cape Town since I'm here, but in all likelihood, what I'll be doing that evening is getting out to see some beautiful African skies, somewhere nice and dark, and look at the Milky Way and just gaze up and sort of honor Yuri Gagarin's ushering in of a new era for human exploration in that fashion. I think being here for Yuri's Night without planning to has actually reminded me that the point of marking that specific episode in human history is to remind ourselves that he wasn't just there for the USSR. He was there as the first human being ever to go to space. And our night sky is shared. I'm here in Cape Town. Friends have been telling me about how often they see Starlink flying overhead these days. The Milky Way is absolutely gorgeous here. I've been reading about the expansion of the SKA project, which is doing really well. I'm finding out about all sorts of companies that are building satellites here in South Africa, and how much Africa as a continent is really jumping in to the space sector and finding all sorts of ways to use it to improve the quality of life here on the continent. Yeah, so that's the takeaway. It doesn't matter that I am here on the other side of the planet to where I usually am. We're still all looking at the same night sky. Space is still impacting our daily lives wherever we live on this planet, and it's still contending with lots of other elements of human society, and we have to figure those out as the sector expands. So I'll leave you with that message. It's great to be here in Cape Town, but I look forward to getting back to Edinburgh and getting back to my desk to do a lot more interviews with some fascinating people. I'll be out and about meeting some people actually face-to-face in the Scottish space sector as well this year, which is exciting. Probably more space conferences to come, and eventually a Space Plus and Yuri's Night event in person in Scotland too. So lots to look forward to, and I will see you soon. Please stay subscribed, and if this interests anyone that you know, just forward it along to them as well. All right, that's it for now. Thank you.